As secretary, you need to be the best you can be.
This group of women whose voice was not being heard.
There's something you can do about it. Everything exploded.
The movie was married to a movement.
They built their own kind of feminism, and it was powerful. I'm not just a secretary, I'm a secretary.
Well, hi, everybody. And Elise and Angel, it's great being on this panel with you. The first time I saw this movie, I was pretty overwhelmed. It had a lot of my friends and comrades from decades of organizing together. I thought the filmmakers made us look great, and the work that we did was important. And I was saying to Angel and Elise before we went live, that when you're doing the work, you're not really thinking about, are you impacting history and so on and so forth. And really seeing that movie was the first time I thought about that in the same way.
That you made history.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
It was part of it.
So next generation organizer, Angel, what came to your mind when you saw the film?
I was surprised. I think that being in the workforce at a different time, I was like, what did they make you do? What were they saying? I think that to think of something like that happening, not even so long ago, right? And the different experience that I have as a working woman, it's kind of jarring. It was eye-opening. Made me feel intense gratitude for the women in that film.
Thank you, sister. We're standing on the shoulders of some really strong.
I really am. Yeah.
I felt sucked back in time. I was just like, oh, the time machine, and things that I'd forgotten about, the atmosphere, the dress, the language, and being a clerical worker. And I was fired for not making coffee. The woman who worked in the office, she'd been there for years. She was a senior secretary, and she said, "You don't want to make coffee, you can't work here, and you're trouble." So that was in that, but that wasn't the end of my clerical career. I kept going. So, what, if anything, do you think we can learn from the past in watching this film and hearing the story told that you lived through, Debbie, and that you're living through now, Angel, as an organizer? What can we learn from the past about organizing today?
You want to go first, Angel?
Okay, Angel, you go.
One of the lines in the movie that I remember is, I'm going to butcher this, but a bad boss sometimes is the best organizer.
And
I think that is so true, right? Like it is important that we are united on one thing, one point, so that we can be inclusive and have different people from different backgrounds be able to join the fight. But having a central, well-defined purpose and movement, I think is important in building. And I think that has not changed. And it's something that we need to remember while we continue to build.
Yes, thank you. Debbie.
One thought I had about that question is that if there is a big wave of social upheaval and you see it coming, catch that wave and ride it as fast and hard as you can, because you don't know when the next one's coming. You can't really make it. The best you can do is ride it and see what you can get out of it. And I think there's so many similarities between the 70s when I came into clerical work and I came into my political work, and today, that, by the mid 80s had died down. Just the fervor of the anti-Vietnam War movement, the women's movement coming off the civil rights movement. And so I would say we are in a wave like that. We have disgraced president now. We had a disgraced president then. That we have some economic upheaval right now coming off of the COVID in particular. So there is just so much disruption going on, and this is the time to move. And I would say that.
Thank you. Agreed.
Mhm.
So looking at the organizing work that and the way it was approached in with 9 to 5, what other tools can you take from it? What other lessons can you take from it?
I think one of the things that I thought was awesome was this concept of skill sharing and creating like these, just basic skills that you could use to be an organizer, which is what we do now, but how they have been the same and how they've evolved, especially now with technology and the way that the world has moved. But there are things that obviously have been that have changed, like we just spoke about. But there are things that remain the same that we need to continue to organize around, right? Like the pay disparities between men and women are still ridiculous, and things that we need to be organizing about. And those are things that we've been that were in this film, and we're very much
Okay.
that we need to pull from, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, I would second that. I think that really a lot of the craft of organizing is the same. The open the door, take people in where they are, don't use language or have expectations about where people are going to be when they come in, but bring them in, make things accessible, let people be active where their comfort zone is. And then once they get the jazz, as Carol Sims said in the movie, they're going to want to do more and more. So I feel like that. I had the experience this fall of working on some political campaign up in the presidential in Michigan through texting. And I got a whole training about, we're going to do relational organizing. And I was like, that's a thing? That is what organizing is. And I just feel like that we have different technology to be able to use it, but the very basic humanity of connecting with people, making it fun, making it challenging, making it interesting in order to make change. There's so many of that. And the jazz, which is the fun, the camaraderie, the being able to learn new things and really flex your skills, all of that is just essential, I think, to any good organizing. And I also think that the issues of race and class, as well as gender, and making sure that you understand how central that is to building organization, that is something that has not changed.
That was a stunning moment in the film when the sister said, do you work with them? Do you have lunch with them? Do you play with their children? How do you make that connection? So I thank you. I'm going to quit rattling my paper now. I'm going to go to the questions from the audience. So the first one is, given what's happened to women during this pandemic, what kind of organizing is happening to make changes?
Yeah, so some of the organizing that we have been doing with Working America has been very much centered around information, getting information out to people. I feel like in the pandemic, folks have been feeling, or especially in the beginning, there was a lot of, nurses and folks that felt very much like there was nothing that they knew, right? Nothing that they could do about it. And so we did some campaigning around reaching out, whether it be just well-being, how you doing, how you're holding up. I think things like that was very important. And then can shape how we respond to it. So that's kind of the approach that we have been taking and moving from as far as organizing folks during this time.
Okay. It's really three of the jobs that were deemed essential are work done by women. And I say, it's what we've always known, women's work is essential. So Debbie, I have a question I'm going to give to you. Are the senior activists doing any work with the Fight for 15 movement? Or any senior activists doing work?
Well, some of the seniors are still working as organizers in Fight to 15 land, but a lot of us are just showing up when we're asked. And it is so exciting what is going on among minimum wage and low wage workers, striking and fighting for change. And there's a lot that we can do politically. The $15 an hour that is being introduced right now in Congress. So those of us who are seniors and know how to be political activists, there's plenty we can do. We, as you can see in the movie, we show up at rallies, have even done that in COVID times, all masked up and a little far away. But there's a ton to be done. But we are not really the developers of the strategy. We are being led by a younger generation.
And I'm happy to pass the baton.
Mm-hmm.
I see you nodding, Angel. Did you want to add anything to that?
No, I think that's great. That's exactly how it needs to go, right? Like you said, standing on the shoulders of women that started this, and just learning and growing and developing strategy, right? And as it changes and evolving, that's the thing that's important, is evolution, right?
Absolutely. And we can talk about social media and all that plays into it. So here's the next question. There's still workplace sexual discrimination and bullying. What's the best way to stop women bullying other women on the job? Best way to stop women bullying other women on the job? Let's take the first crack at that. Think about it for a moment.
Well, it's not something that I've actually spent much time on, because it's not something that's come at me very much in my life. But I would say it's like any other workplace problem, is that you have to find allies, and that the collective is the answer. And so if one woman is bullying another woman, she's probably bullying others as well. And I just think that you've got to find allies where you can and develop a strategy with them to take it on. And that's just sort of the first basic. I don't know, Angel and I have worked in very different kinds of places. So, in clerical workforce, there's one thing, and the kinds of places you've worked and you've organized are different.
Yeah, I would say that just like any type of bullying, right? It is something that we can't completely say that we have a strategy to eliminate, right? I think that there are tools in our tool belt that we can use. I think knowing the company that you're working for and the policies that they claim to uphold, and making sure that those are well versed and spoken about early and often. I think knowing who to go to when things are things are happening. I think it falls heavily on leadership of any organization to kind of set the culture for that type of thing. So because of the changes that I'm now experiencing and being the privilege to experience, there are a lot of women in positions of leadership, and being able to understand, like, okay, that is who I talk to if I'm experiencing this from this group of people. I think sometimes when it's fuzzy and the hierarchy is fuzzy, you're like, okay, I don't even know who that person's boss is or who I should be talking to about certain things. So making sure that everybody along the entire organization understands that, I think is a good step. It's about the infrastructure that you build within an organization and how much people know it to be able to combat stuff like that.
And I'm a labor educator, so I always think you need to be having classes, you need to be doing training. You have to have information available, readily available for people to access.
Yep.
So here's the next question from our audience. Have you been following the organizing efforts of Amazon in Alabama? And what are your thoughts? Yes. Speaking of something that's rising up from this pandemic and from this last administration and women and people of color and the Black Lives Matter movement, Amazon is organizing. What do you think?
Yeah, it's a big warehouse down in Alabama, and the ballots are going out. And I am looking forward to a win from them by the time they count those ballots in March. The employers tried every way it knows how to avoid, they didn't want a mail ballot. They wanted to make people come in person. I mean, just every trick in the book these employers will use, but these workers have organized. They are going to have their vote. They're going to do it by mail. And I'm excited to see what's going to come from that, because the rest of the country and the rest of the world can take a lot of optimism if these workers in Alabama stand up. And we're going to help them get that first contract. You can see from the movie that getting the first contract is not always easy. So they got to keep organizing past that first win, and there might be ways we can, as consumers, can help.
And we won't talk about defeats because we got on that in our chat. Angel, you want to address this?
I think that's Debbie's right on point. The only thing I would add to that is it's right on time. I mean,
it is right on time.
It's right on time.
So next question. Do you think 9 to 5 was more creative because it was a grassroots women worker-led movement rather than a project undertaken by an established union? What was that impact of having grassroots women worker-led rather than the top-down hierarchical structures that we know today? Debbie,
Yes.
want to say about that?
Yes.
Okay.
I think that when things are creative, I mean, when things are grassroots, they will be more creative. They will be more reflective of the people who are organizing. Yes, I definitely think so.
I know that, Angel, you said that when you started organizing, the first thing you ask people is, what is important to you?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And in that aspect of getting people where they are right now.
Yep.
And so you found that's working with grassroots, and and people are being creative in that respect?
I think that's what drives the creativity, right? It is one way to, I mean, you never want to come to a conversation with your mind made up, because that's not a conversation anymore. You're really just trying to convince somebody at that point, which nobody likes to feel convinced or, sold on something. So yes, knowing what is important to the folks that you're organizing and being flexible in that way, I think is what makes it powerful. And I can't speak for the 9 to 5 movement, but I think that is something that I find to be so inspirational, is that it came from what it was trying to change, right? So like, it cannot get more raw and more organic and more real than that. And that's why we have to, it's about learning from that and growing from that.
Raw, real, and organic. Thank you, sister. I am so there. So this is a question I'm gonna take to you first, Angel, because you're doing it right now. What we hear is workers are struggling to build relationships because of the pandemic. There is no way to go to have lunch or grab coffee safely. So what tips can you give folks to keep organizing under this quarantine? And the
all about the technology, the social media, the Zoom calls after Zoom call, that is one of the things that I think has where we have to evolve, right? We're not able to do the meetup, to, sign the paper petitions anymore, right? Or for right now. Right. But we can still do these things through text messages, through emails, through video chats, through phone calls. I think that's also a really important thing, because I think we can kind of overcorrect sometimes, where it's like, okay, I can't see you, so I'm just going to send you this email and I'll keep up with you in email, but that also we lose something there. So you got to know when to pick up the phone, when to have a video call, when to see someone's face, check in with them, see how they're doing. It's still very much, you know, a way to build relationships is through this fabulous technology that we have readily available to most of us, even on our cell phones.
Absolutely. And certainly the next generation, I find, is much more adept at it, and that's where they're getting the information from. And so in the Coalition Labor Union, when we're training everybody on Zoom, it's like, it's not just because this isn't going to be over when the pandemic is over. This is a tool that we can still use, right?
Yep.
Debbie, did you want to add anything to that?
No, that's good.
So the question is, this is a basic question. Are most unions still so dominated by men? It could be yes or no, but you could go on about it.
Elise, you know the answer to that. Why don't you tell us?
We know, yes, it is still, it is still, right? And what does that mean in terms of organizing and the work that we're doing?
Mm-hmm. I mean, not all unions are, and I think if you look at the unions that have really been taking incredible action this year in the pandemic, the years before, the teachers in all of those red states that have been so militant, the healthcare workers who are insisting on their rights this year and ongoing. There are many unions that are predominantly women workforces and that are led by women. But there's still a lot of unions out there that are not.
The next AFL-CIO convention is going to be very interesting. Angel, did you want to add anything to this?
I mean, it's the takeover, right? I mean, it's about how it's important that the folks that are being organized have a seat at the table and are a part of these conversations, and it changes the strategy when the folks that are in charge of things know what it's like. And so it's only, I think it is, from my perspective, it is diversifying, where because of movements like the 9 to 5 movement, where we are you know, churning out these strong women leaders, and it's only a matter of time before it balances itself out.
Okay, so I see a question in the chat room about Black Lives Matter, but I'm not sure, because there are more, and I know we're running low on time. So let me go to the next one. I'm a member of Philly Clue. Hello, Philly Clue. Was a lorry girl temp in New York in the 70s and could have used 9 to 5. People have become so used to Zoom that labor movements should take advantage of that to turn to Zoom for organizing in a major way. That's a statement, right? Okay. Teachers, flight attendants. I'm trying to scroll. Did I miss anything? Let's see. We have an organizing committee right now comprised of all women, and they're concerned about not being inclusive or diverse right now in their efforts. I told them that will come in time, but I'm curious, what is your advice? What would be your advice to them?
Because the workforce is not all women, but their committee is.
Good question.
That's what I think their question is.
We can't get to the point we can ask that.
So I think you have to be intentional about this, and that you need to do the work until you have a leadership among who you're organizing that reflects the membership. So if that means you have to do very particular outreach to get some men involved, then you've got to come up with a strategy to do that. You know, when we organize in the union, you have to worry about what shift people are on, different job titles, as well as demographic things around race and gender. So if it's all women starting, that's a very good start. But then you have to be really particular about making sure you're going out and reaching out to people who, for whatever reason, aren't feeling welcome or inspired, and listening's a very good start. to figuring out what it is that will bring them in.
What about you? What do you think, Angel?
I think that the fact that there is already a recognition and an acknowledgement that you need to diversify is the first step, right? I think that whenever trying to create a inclusive, diverse environment, it is about being okay with the uncomfortableness sometimes, and kind of like what Debbie was saying, like going out of the way to figure out ways to be inclusive. So figure out what you've been trying to stay away from and do that.
Excellent. Thank you. We're going to wrap up here real quick. My last question, because this is the question that you said, Angel, that this is the first thing you ask somebody when you're organizing, is what is important to you? What is important to you, Angel, right now? Debbie, what's important to you?
Well, I would say what's important to me right now is kind of piggybacking off of what the last question was, and that is very much staying intentional with the way that I organize and the way that I show up for the communities that I'm advocating for, making sure that I'm also being okay with the uncomfortableness and being inclusive, right? Being intentional about uniting all people, all women, you know, trans women, women of color, the LGBT community, immigrants, everybody. And sometimes it's hard to even be like, you know, some of the folks who don't think the way that I do, and figuring out how we can find common ground and unite to help us all in the end. So I think that's what's important to me when we're in this very polarized environment, right? Especially coming off of a administration that felt so alienating to a lot of folks. You can start putting up your own walls and becoming part of the problem. And so it's important to me to recognize when I'm doing that, when I see something that makes me put my walls up and think, why am I doing this right now? What could I do to change this right now? And how can I take note of it so I can help other people do the same?
Thank you. Self-reflection. Debbie, what's important to you?
I think it's important to keep on keeping on. That there are always going to be setbacks, there's always going to be frustrations, there's going to be outrages, and that building community, investing in people, particularly focusing on people who are different than I am, and learning and reaching out there and never stopping doing that. Trusting the wisdom of the group, if the group is diverse enough, and really keeping hope alive, and keeping the jazz alive, because I think those things are what's going to keep bringing the energy forward.
Oh yeah, thank you. Thank both of you. I want to really appreciate you for sharing, for the good questions we got. Tonight's screening was presented by the DC Labor Film Fest, the Coalition of Labor Union Women, the Labor Heritage Foundation, and the Rochester Labor Film Series. The DC Labor Fest is sponsored by American Income Life. I'd like to thank our techie, Evan. Thank you very much. Evan Papp, Chris Garlock, of course, the OGG, and special thanks to Karen Nussbaum for helping put this panel together. Bless her heart. She's still working too. We who believe in freedom cannot rest. And that was Ella Baker's words. We who believe in freedom cannot rest. And so the work, we know what the work is, and we know the work that we have been called to do. Thank you, Debbie. Thank you, Angel. Thank you all very much for sharing your knowledge. But one more thing, Debbie, and I'm gonna give you last word, Angel. Okay.
I was actually gonna serve it up to Angel, because Karen Nussbaum at the end of the movie asked, what happens to consciousness? And I wanted to toss that over to Angel, who I think has some wisdom to share around that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that, thank you for that. And Karen is near and dear to me. She has inspired me to do all the work that I do, especially within Working America. And I think that this question about what happens to consciousness is summed up in this proverb, this Mexican proverb that says, they tried to bury us and they didn't know we were seeds. And I think that is hits the nail on the head, right? Like, we might take a loss. We might, do all of this build up to take a loss and not get what we wanted maybe from the organizing efforts, but that doesn't stop there. It's still there and it's still growing. And the next opportunity, it's going to pick right back up where it needed to. And we see it happening now, right? So.
Thank you, sisters. Thank you, family. Thank you, siblings, comrades, all of you who tuned in. I know there were people from around the world. I saw people from Australia and the UK, and there was somebody from South America, I think, too. So thank you. We will see you next time. Everybody stay safe, stay well, and solidarity forever.
You better listen, my brother, 'cause if you do, you can hear there are voices still calling from across the years. And they're crying across the ocean, they're crying across the land, and they will until we all come to understand. None of us are free, none of us are free.